won't be able to save you.
How long do you have to find somebody if they're buried?
It depends. Anywhere from, let's say, 15 minutes to a half hour max.
So if you don't find it in a half an hour?
If the dog's not there digging in a half hour, your chances of survival get steadily worse and worse.
Bruce has learned one thing. Those who claim to be avalanche experts get complacent. And that's when the white dragon kills. Just ask Francois Desrosiers. Back in December '99, he and 4 friends, all experienced backcountry skiers, started a 7-hour climb looking for fresh snow. As they hiked higher, Francois saw danger at his feet.
I started noticing something was wrong when on your way up the mountain, the snow consistency started changing. It changed from a light fluffy powder into like a compact, hard, styrofoam-like snow. And that's when I started to think like, oh, I wonder if everything's okay.
It wasn't. Francois then heard a muffled explosion and looked up to see a wall of white like this.
We pretty much were right at the top, right in the path of the dragon, so we were in the wrong spot.
The avalanche roared down this slope. It was 3 meters high, half a kilometer wide.
I remember this avalanche striking me just like a semi-truck would on the highway. It hit me so hard. It was completely dark the whole time, and I was just being tossed around like in a laundry machine and just like tumbling. And then I don't know if you have ever been hit in the nose really hard, but you see a flash of light. Well, I saw so many flashes of light, and I just kept seeing these flashes of light and flashes of light.
Francois was dragged down the slope, through trees and over rocks for about a kilometer, when the snow finally slowed to a stop.
So I had my head and part of one arm exposed out of the snow, and so I was very lucky for that. It was just really intense.
It just doesn't end. It's not just the avalanche taking you down, and then it's the aftermath. You're stuck there.
Yeah, and not just stuck there, but you're stuck there dealing with all your injuries, right? And for myself, I had a lot of injuries. I started to dig away at the snow, and I realized that the more that I dug, the more difficult it became, because that snow really was like a hockey rink. It really was like sheer ice. And so I ended up breaking all my fingernails off that day just trying to scrape away at the snow. And I realized that there was nobody else around, because I gave a couple yells and I didn't get any response from anybody, or there was nobody around. You're in the middle of nowhere, and I was on my own.
By a stroke of pure luck, there was an avalanche training course underway at the foot of the hill. 4 of the skiers were saved. The 5th, 23-year-old Shane Block, died of internal injuries. And though the avalanche killed again, that spirit to discover, to defy the odds, lives on. That's what brought us to these mountains in the first place. And that's what keeps us coming back for more, as every day someone else heads out into the backcountry. As for Francois Desrosiers, he's skiing again. And 7 years to the day after that avalanche left him for dead, he climbed that same mountain, only this time he came down the slope on his skis, tempting fate, taunting the white dragon. Mark Kelly, CBC News, Revelstoke, BC.
And that's News in Review. I'm Carla Robinson. Thanks for watching. On a runway in Cape Breton, a famous Canadian plane flies again. On News and Review today, the flight of the Silver Dart. Hello, I'm Carla Robinson. Canada has a long and proud aviation history. From its outstanding contribution in World War II, when Canadian pilots fought for the Allied cause, and tens of thousands of Allied pilots learned to fly in the country's Commonwealth Training Plan, to some of the famous planes it has built. Like the rugged de Havilland Beaver that daring bush pilots used to open up the interior.
Get 513 Tower Tower, clear for takeoff, 32.
The legendary Avro Arrow that was the pride of Canada before it was suddenly scrapped. And the modern planes that companies like Bombardier built today. Canada's aviation story is still being written. But it all started 100 years ago in Badek, a small village on Cape Breton Island, when on the 23rd of February 1909, a fragile aircraft called the Silver Dart made a short hop over a frozen lake and into the history books. But why did it happen in Badek? Well, because a famous scientist and inventor named Alexander Graham Bell lived nearby, and the Silver Dart was his dream. The CBC's Peter Mansbridge picks up the story.
Alexander Graham Bell saw a deep beauty in Cape Breton. From his first vacation here in 1885, the island captured his heart. Born in Scotland, emigrated to Ontario, he later moved to the U.S., where he would become one of the most famous inventors in the world. But until his death in 1922, he was happiest at his country mansion overlooking the Bredor Lakes. It's now a distant summer home for the inventor's descendants. But when Bell and his family lived here, it was alive with science. 50 years ago, his daughter Elsie described it to the CBC.
We'd have simple experiments at the table. After dinner was over, Charles would bring in a big tray and bottles and water and that sort of thing. And we would, I remember dropping a match in a bottle and then putting an egg on top of the bottle, and and the egg would be drawn in to the bottle.
Shane McFarlane is an amateur historian and lifelong resident of Badek. He grew up hearing stories about the Bell family.
The Bells were not only large economic suppliers to the area, but they were involved in the family. They were part of this area. They were part of the people. They always made sure that the families were well taken care of. They held, through the year, they held picnics, and they were just part of the community. And to this day, they're part of the community.
A century ago, practically everyone in Badek worked on one of Bell's experiments. He built hydrofoils and broke world speed records testing them on the lake. He studied genetics in his pastures, breeding sheep that would always bear twins. Bell's insatiable curiosity also turned to the mystery of powered flight. His aviation work started here with kites. He built giant ones, believing they could lift a human. But his first test flight in 1906 ended in a watery crash.
Then from then on, we began to think more in building what are known today as the conventional plane.
Douglas McCurdy was a protege of Bell's, an engineer, one of several young men recruited by Bell's wife, Mabel, to help with his work.
And she made the suggestion that now that Mr. Bell had with him two young engineers, of doubtful promise, I might say, as engineers, that it might be well to think of trying to hold them with him in carrying on his experiments. And she suggested that an association be formed and be enlarged, if necessary, in numbers, and that she would be willing to finance it to the extent of $20,000.
They called themselves the Aerial Experiment Association. Now, with Mabel's funds to back it and Bell as its leader, the AEA grew to include not just Douglas McCurdy and another young engineer, Casey Baldwin, but also American engine builder Glenn Curtis and U.S. Army Lieutenant Thomas Selfridge, sent to observe by the U.S. government. At a new base near Curtis's shop in New York, the team built and flew 3 prototypes, each building on the experience of the last. Undeterred by early mishaps, they made dozens of successful flights. The fourth prototype was a contraption made of bamboo, wire, and canvas. They called it the Silver Dart. In January 1909, Bell decided it was time to showcase their work back home in Baddeck.
I think Mr. Bell decided that as the association was composed of both Americans and Canadians, it would be nice to have a flight of one of the machines on British soil. So the Silver Dart was brought up here in the fall of 1908, and the engine finally arrived, it was assembled, and it just happened on the 23rd of February that everything was in order.
That afternoon, the Silver Dart was trundled out onto the ice. Douglas McCurdy was in the pilot seat. Most of Baddeck was watching. The engine sputtered, then roared to life. Down the ice, and suddenly into the air.
And think the thing that impressed me most was the look of absolute astonishment on the faces of the spectators.
It was over in just 48 seconds, but the Silver Dart had flown 800 meters and reached an altitude of 9 meters. Canada was airborne.
The Bells were, to use an old phrase, a godsend to this particular area. Some things you can't change in this area. The beauty is here, and the Bells saw the beauty in the area.
Bell's legacy is never more obvious than on an anniversary like today's. For aviation buffs, there's no place like Baddeck, the birthplace of flight in Canada and the final resting spot of the man who made it happen.
With the 100th anniversary of that famous flight coming up this year, a group of aviation enthusiasts decided to try to make the Silver Dart fly again. So they built a replica of the flimsy aircraft in a hangar in Hamilton, Ontario. They recruited a former Canadian astronaut as its pilot and tested it successfully.
He's up in the air. He's up.
Then it was off to Baddeck. They were hoping to make the big flight on the day of the anniversary, but as the CBC's Tom Murphy reports, with bad weather on its way, they decided to go for it a day earlier.
What a day to fly back into history. This rickety replica of the Silver Dart is the time machine, painstakingly built by volunteers, piloted by former Canadian astronaut Bjarne Tryggvason.
I'm feeling fine.
And the crowd was feeling nostalgic.
Oh, it's just an album of photographs that were taken by our grandfather in 1909.
100 years ago, February 23rd, 1909, the real Silver Dart took flight. Built by Alexander Graham Bell, flown by Cape Breton's own J.A.D. McCurdy, it was the first powered flight in the British Empire. What would McCurdy think today?
He'd say to the pilot, he'd say, "Excuse me, sir, but move over. I want a flyer."
Fresh in everyone's mind, though, was a previous attempt here in Baddeck to recreate the flight in 1959. It didn't go so well. No serious injuries, but people's pride took a beating.
Okay, keep back, everybody!
But these folks are adventurers. Their first attempt on the ice showed some promise, but the Dart barely got airborne. The nose was just too heavy.
And when I turned around, the nose wheel broke off, and it looks like a couple of bolts came off someplace along the run.
So while the repairs were underway, a display of Canada's aviation prowess, the Skyhawks parachute team dropped in. Then a refurbished 1950s vintage Sabre jet fighter flew overhead.
So cool.
Well, I think if John McCurdy could see the F-86 Sabre, he would love a ride in that, too.
One-of-a-kind weather vane. $500. I go with it.
The real show was yet to come. On the third attempt by the Silver Dart, with a new front wheel and a few more tweaks, success. It flew about 1,200 meters, straight as a dart.
I was ready to fly all day long.
Organizers hope to do it all over again tomorrow, the actual anniversary of Canada's first powered flight. But the forecast calls for heavy winds, rain, and snow, and people here realize this may have been their best chance to recreate a historic moment.
And unfortunately, they were right. The next day, the winds were just too strong and the Silver Dart was grounded.
The winds are about gusting to 30. This airplane is about 12-mile-an-hour winds, so we're, more than twice what would be proper for the aircraft to fly.
So people had to settle for a silver dollar and a special stamp presentation. Look at it, Johnny! And remember the thrill of watching history repeated. Since that first flight, Canada's aviation industry has come a long way. Today, Bombardier Aerospace is the world's third largest manufacturer of civilian aircraft.
To the success of the C-Series. Thank you.
Last year, it announced plans to build a new line of jets, the C-Series. The company says the new planes will be more fuel efficient and less polluting than similar aircraft flying today. And it's not only Bombardier. As the CBC's Sasha Petrusik reports, another famous old Canadian plane is making a comeback.
Picture a place where the wind blows hard and cold, where rock and ice prevail, where the weather flouts every forecast. An entire continent so inhospitable, no one calls it home. But when someone needs to go to Antarctica, they go with a Canadian, the rugged Twin Otter turboprop, a favorite of South Pole pilots, British, American, Chilean, and the Argentines.
We always say, until you came in and see what the Twin Otters do in the Antarctica, you don't have an idea what can really do this airplane.
Co-pilot Lieutenant Diego Ifran.
It was built for this condition.
This particular airplane, designed and built in Toronto, now sits in Marambio, the main Antarctic base for Argentina. It's been flying for the Argentine Air Force since the mid-70s. We take off from the gritty, snowy runway. Like many days, the crosswind is strong and the